So this morning I'm going to be talking about building a non-anxious life, and we are in our second sermon of the series, Building a Non-Anxious Life. And this morning I have the privilege to have David Leonell. He is a police chaplain from the police force. He's going to share with us his role. David, can I invite you to come forward?
Thank you.
Well, great to have you this morning. It's a privilege to have you to be here. We had school chaplains to talk to us a few times, but I don't recall we have ever had a police chaplains to talk to us. So David, can you introduce yourself and give us a bit of idea how long you have been in your role and what made you choose to be a police chaplain?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and welcome everyone. I guess just to explain what I do, I've been a chaplain for probably I think over 11 years now. I was in palliative care chaplaincy before this at Bethesda Hospital and other places. But I've been a police chaplain for about 3.5 years. If you're wondering what the connection is to this church, Phil and Carol Adner are my parents. Don't hold that against them. But I guess what we do as police chaplains, there's 6 police chaplains at the moment, and we're very much, we're very well used. We have a number of roles, but one of the key things amongst the, aside from the ceremonial aspect, is that we attend critical incidents when we're on call of a specific level, particularly those where officers and staff might be exposed to trauma situations. We offer spiritual cares, and that could be sometimes as simple as handing out water and lollies, but more often than not, it's actually assisting them and helping officers understand what's happening to them when they respond to those traumatic incidents, and helping them get the assistance they need that's available to them. The other part of my role is actually getting out and visiting stations and visiting officers around the state. I have the pleasure of being in the Kimberleys this year, which means I get to go to places like Columbaroo and Balgo. I get to fly on the police plane, which is pretty cool, but also, and apparently they've just got a jet, which I'm looking forward to because it's going to be a little bit faster. But I also had the pleasure of going out to places as remote as Warracoona, Warburton, even the Northern Territory, where we have a police officer stationed there with Northern Territory officers in Kintore. So we get to go around the state, see a lot more than I've ever seen before, and it's pretty cool.
Awesome. So, today we are in the context of the Building a Non-Anxious Life series. Wonder if you can share a story around anxiety with us.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to speak to just general anxiety that we all experience, but if you struggle with anxiety or it's consuming your life, I just want to encourage you, just reach out for help. Get your GP or see one of the pastors. I think it's important to acknowledge that we all suffer at one stage, but sometimes if it overwhelms us, we need to seek help from people other than ourselves. And we need to share our stories, because you'd be surprised how many people have been on that journey. But the other part of it is just to acknowledge that anxiety is actually a good thing. I know I'm anxious standing up in front of you because, you may not like me. And so I want to use that energy to put forward to you and just to put my best self forward. But I know that when I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning to attend a traffic fatal somewhere and to support officers on scene there, I know I'm anxious. I know I wake up and there's a sense of I drive down to the scene. I don't know what I'm going to be faced with. I don't know whether I'm going to be enough. I don't know whether I'm going to have all the answers that may be placed on me. And so I'm very much aware that I need to calm myself. And one of the ways I do that is I actually just begin with breathing. So when we're anxious, we breathe up here and we breathe shallow, okay? When we breathe down here, we actually begin to relax ourselves. Breath is very significant in the Bible, being the life force that God breathed into us. And so what I'm doing is actually just bringing myself into the centre of who I am in Christ, that I am enough, I'm called to be where I be, and I'm not doing it alone, that Christ is with me. And then also when I arrive on scene, it's just simply being aware of what can I control and what I can't do. I can't control whether or not you're going to like me, so actually I can only control how I respond to that and understanding who I am. And also remember that who I am is so very important. I had one person ring me one time, a lady ring me one time, and she was going through a terrible time in her employment situation. and was quite exhausted and quite stressed about the outcome of that situation. But she told me in her story that she was a ultra marathon runner, which I have no relation to at all, but these people go out and run 50 kilometres just for the fun of it. And when she was talking about the experience of the emotional drag and the longevity of it, and I reminded her of who she was as an ultramarathon runner, that this was exactly the same thing. And she had already had within her the things she needed. And she came back, "You're absolutely right." Another officer who was a coronial officer, she's not there as well, but she also came forward, and it just communicates the power we have as going in with Christ within us as chaplains. Now, as chaplains, we're the only non-civilians that are allowed to wear the police uniform, and we have purple epaulets with a cross on them. And so when we talk about the purple, it's referred to else. But she sent me back some feedback she had, and this is what we often get from officers, that we turn up and sometimes I feel like I'm not doing much. I'm just standing there chatting with people. Well, what it does do is the presence that I bring with the Christ within me brings about this. And she sent me this message. She sent me this poem and wrote this down. She's speaking from her own perspective. When I see the blue, red and white lights are flashing and there's nothing but carnage and chaos, I hear the screaming and noises. I smell things that I know that are not good. All your senses tell you that this is bad. I look up and see the purple. I feel safe. I know that everything is going to be okay. I can go on. There is hope. I sincerely thank you for the grounding and stability you provide us all in these times. Thank you. It's just a reminder that each one of us with Christ within us, we're enough. We can continue through, and yes, anxiety does come, but we just need to give it back to God. And with Christ within us, the Spirit within us, leading us, we can overcome.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think David sums up really well. The way to navigate anxiety is always return to Jesus. Have Christ in the center and enter into his presence. I think there cannot be more truth than that. So this morning we want to talk about anxiety. Anxiety is a response of us to fears, to things happening in our life that really threatening us, that is really stressing us out. And it can be presented physically as if you might have difficulty breathing, you might feel exhausted constantly, or it might impact us mentally. You find it hard to focus, to concentrate on a task that you are supposed to do. Sometimes it impacts us behaviorally, as if you might have some out of proportion response to a normal circumstances. You overreact because you are anxious, you are under stress. And there got to be a moment in our life we feel so anxious, so agitated, you simply cannot sit still. Nothing can calm you down. And you can't even see hope in the future because you're so worried about what is happening now at present. And I guess the journey of life, you always have a lot of twists and turns. You cannot avoid it. It could be a situation to do with relocation decision. It could be a career change, or it could be a relationship circumstances. All these kind of things can make us anxious in our life. And anxiety is something that you cannot simply avoid because it's a normality of life. You must have it, and it helps you grow. It actually points you in the direction of God if you look at the right place. And I think that it's very important for us to understand that anxiety is part of our life. And in the Bible, there is actually a story in Exodus talking about how the journey of the Israelites has a lot of twists and turns. God called them out of Egypt. God helped them flee Egypt to go to another place, to reboot their life, to restart a new page, to go to the promised land to settle. But that journey, even God say he is leading them, it was not without challenges or anxiety. And this is how God assured them he is always there. He said, the Lord went ahead of the Israelites in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so they can travel by day and night. So what God is telling the Israelites is He is always there, 24/7. God has given them something very visual, so they can look at it, follow it all the time, regardless how far you are, whether it's daylight or not. It's always there, and you can see them. And on their journey, they have a lot of challenges. So this morning, what I want to look at is, looking at the story in Exodus, I want to ask some questions and find answers in the sermon. The question I want to find answers are, well, who is your first go-to person in face of anxiety and fears? What kind of things or people you are hanging on to when you're anxious? Why God want the Israelites to look at the cloud all the time? Is there a reason of that? Why God want them to follow the cloud? There got to be a reason why God wants them to do it. And this is how the story unfolds. So at the beginning of their journey, they were just leaving Egypt. And then the army from Egypt, they were following them, they're chasing them, they're after them, marching behind very closely. And then they start to complain. They were looking at Moses for their comfort, and they complained to him. They say, well, is there not enough grace in Egypt? That's why you want to bring us out in the wilderness to get killed. It's not enough grace in Egypt to bury us, but you bring us out in the wilderness so we can be buried. Leave us alone. Send us back. We'd rather go back to Egypt. Now, I'm sure before they left Egypt, they all have an agreement. This is a good idea to go and leave. Otherwise, they would not be there. So they all agree to go, but now they're having a backflip. They think, well, it's probably better to go back instead of keep going forward because they're very terrified what is happening to them. Immediately, they look at Egypt. They have a backflip there. And this happens in life all the time. Just think of when you move to a new suburb. It happens in couples or in a household. You know, when you move to a new suburb, you find it so difficult. You're so far from the city. And then you bought a house that is a bit old. You want to do renovation. And then you start to wonder, why do we have to do so much work before we move in? People buy a new house. They know once they get the key, there's still plenty to do before you can actually move in. In the face of challenges, anxiety, you look back, well, why are we here? Maybe we should go back to the home where we live. Why are we living here? There's a lot of anxiety and backflip going on if you constantly not look at God, but look back on things. And then as the story continued to unfold, the Israelites, they said to Aaron and Moses, well, we are running out of food now. Isn't it better to be back in Egypt? At least you've got meat to eat, you've got hot pots to eat, there's all kinds of things there. But now we are in the wilderness. We don't have anything to eat. We are going to die. And that's very normal. A lot of people, when they are facing anxiety, they hang on to their past. They look back to the past experience and then compare. Isn't it better to be there? I thought you were trying to get out of slavery. That's why God brought you out of Egypt, to reboot your life so you can have a new start. People lose their focus on God and think of going backwards. Food is another comfort zone. It's something tangible that you can have, you can eat, you can hang on to. When you're anxious, you might look for food for comfort, and that's normal. Here it goes. We've got the lemon and ginger tea here. What it said is warming and comforting. You go for it, will you? I had this on Friday night when I was preparing this sermon late. That helps. You know, some people, if you're born overseas, you can relate to that. So you're born overseas, you don't have the Australian heritage like me. If I need some for comfort, I always go to a Chinese restaurant. It's not Mecca. It's not fish and chips for me because my cultural heritage is Chinese. So I'll go to a Chinese restaurant to get some Asian food to eat so I can get the comfort. You know, when we were in Thailand, we had a free night. You know where the team goes for their dinner? They went to Sizzler. They went to Sizzler for dinner in Chiang Rai. There's nothing here. There's no Sizzler in Perth anymore, but there's one in Chiang Rai. So if you want your country food, head over to Chiang Rai next year. I'll show you where it is. There is a comfort thing in our life we want to hang on to. That's very normal. But if it takes our eyes off Jesus, it is problematic. We hang on to our past. We want to go back to our past, want to go back to our comfort zone. In this scenario, the Israelites, they look back for the food they enjoy back in Egypt. And that's when they take their eyes off Jesus. And then the question will be, well, if you are anxious, if you have fears, if you are facing challenges, what is the reasons we need to go back to God? Is there a reason for us to return to God? The Bible has an answer. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Now, you may not have to think this particular passage is literally talking about God assemble us in mom's womb. It doesn't have to be that case. You don't have to think of God is putting our arms and legs together and put our head back to our body in our mother's womb. It may not be what it means here. I don't take the literal meaning. But what this passage is clearly telling us is God knows us before we were born. So God knows us in day 0, not day 1, because your parents know you after you were born. So that's day 1. Your friends know you after you have been a friend with him or her for a while. They know you. But God knows us from day 1. Now, you know, when you are feeling anxious, you want to look for those people who can understand you. You want to be known. You want someone to fully know you. That's why you go for those people who you can talk to. For some people, it could be your spouse, it could be your parent, it could be your teacher, it could be a close friend. But in saying that, all these people, they only know you externally. But how you present yourself, how they understand your situation, from the life experience, from the people that they have encountered, they're trying to put a picture of you together to understand you, because none of them know you from day 1. The Bible said only God knows you from day 1. And he knows you all the way. Anyone else that's external to you. And the idea of the cloud, which is God, for us to follow, has a bit of twist there. You know, you recognize this symbol here? What is this symbol? It's about a cloud. In the modern day, you upload information, right? Have you ever wondered why God can absorb our anxiety and worries? How can we upload things to God? Why do we upload our anxiety and worries to God above us? There is a reason behind. Because the Bible clearly tells us God has infinite capacity. I don't know how many terabytes he is. I don't know. All I know is Google give you 10. If you're on a business account, it gives you 1 terabyte from one drive. That's all I know. You can get more. But there is still a limitation. God has no limitation. The cloud that we're talking about is infinite. He has got infinite capacity to absorb what you want to tell him. He won't shut down you. That's very important for us to know. Because if you rely on a human being, someone that is close to you, you constantly upload your worries, your stress, your anxiety to them. They are only finite human beings. They will be saturated. They have only a finite capacity to hear you, to listen to you. There's only that much they can absorb. But God has got infinite capacity. You know, when you are anxious, when you need a counselor, or you need a pastor, or chaplains, or teachers, or someone in your life that you want to talk to, after you talk to them, they need to see someone else. They might need to see their mentor, they might need to see their senior, to have a bit of debrief. Because they only have that much they can absorb. Whatever you upload to them, they've got to find somewhere to unload it. Because they have a limited capacity to absorb what you said. Go to God. That's what the Bible is telling you. Because he has got infinite capacity. Because if you constantly look for a human being to upload all your worries, they will be saturated. They will shut down at some point. You know, when I was in high school, one of my friends, he actually called me. And because one of his friends made a comment on him to say, well, compared to another guy, you're not that attractive to a particular girl in the school. And because of that comment, he was so upset and so anxious. So he called me for about a conversation for probably 45 minutes, if not to an hour, just to tell me how untrue that comment is, just to defend himself. And then next day, my friend came to me and said, did he call you for a conversation similar to this? Yes, he did. How did you know? I asked him. He called me as well. And then I said, what did you do to him? Well, I hang up on him because I can't. And I said, I didn't know you can do it that way. Oh, that's interesting. Bottom line is, God will not hang up on you, regardless of how absurd the conversation could be. God will not hang up on you. He has got infinite capacity to listen to you, to absorb you. And that's very important to know. He has infinite capacity. And that leads to my next point. If you rely on one human being for everything, there is a problem. They're not eternal. You put all your hope in someone who has got a finite capacity, who cannot absorb everything. The Bible wants us to put all our hope in God. You will keep it in a perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Trust in the Lord forever. For the Lord himself is the rock eternal. What Isaiah is telling us here is God is the one who is eternal, who will last forever. You've got to put the hope in the right place. Put your trust in God, the right person who can help you, who can understand you. In fact, there are only two persons under the sun that can understand you. One is yourself. Sometimes we may not even know ourselves. The second person is God. No one can truly understand the depth of you except God. And nothing is eternal. Let's say if you relied on food for comfort, that's okay. That's not a problem at all. But food is perishable. It's not eternal. As you get older, your appetite drops. You can't eat that much. One option gone. That's not eternal. But some people relied on alcohol or cigarette. Well, some people find it work for them. Some people don't, but there is a price to pay. The question is how much you have to pay and when you have to pay up. Because there's only that much you can drink, only that much you can breathe in. Got to a point your body will tell you to stop. That solution cannot be eternal. Some people say possessions is their comfort. Well, you know what? You'll be too holy to be in the church if you say possessions cannot bring you comfort. Possessions does bring you comfort. The question is, how much do you need? How much do you need? You can carry your possessions to the grave, but you will not be able to carry it beyond the grave. You cannot carry it beyond it. There's only that much you can carry to the grave, but you can carry it beyond it. Whether you're heading to hell or heading to heaven, none of those things you can bring with you to the grave, beyond the grave, except God. He is eternal. Nothing outside God can be eternal. You're looking for someone in your life, you hope you can get an eternal companion. It's not going to happen because your spouse will pass away, your friends will move on, you might move to another job, you lose your colleague. There are plenty of opportunity. People will move on. None of them are really eternal except God. God is the only one that can be eternal, that can walk alongside you, who understands you. If you put all your hope in one person other than God, or only in one person other than God, you have a massive problem. Because if they don't understand you, if you don't feel heard, if they cannot enter into your pain, it brings disappointment. It brings frustration. Fear sparks anxiety. Anxiety brings disappointment. It brings anger. Because the only one that can last long with you and understand you is God. I think the Bible is very clear in that. Only God can fill the void in our life. In the course of Exodus, they were leaving, running away from Egypt. God asked them, you need to listen to him carefully. Pay attention to his commands. keep all his decrees. God wanted the Israelites to listen to him, to get his instructions, to follow him, because that's the way to navigate through the complexity of life, the anxiety of life that they have. And in Romans chapter 12, it said, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, perfect will. It's very important to understand, if you want comfort, if you want to live a long, anxious life, you need to conform to God, not conform to the world. You need to get the instructions from God as you download it from the cloud, where God is. What makes us anxious, a lot of people will say, is our desire for possessions, our desire for wealth, our desire for things, our ambitions. Could be pride, and romance, and money, cars, could be anything. But God is saying, well, follow his instruction. Go for his will, not the world wants us, not the will from the world, but from God. And then this is what he said. Jesus said, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I did not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. By focusing on God, following his instructions, the peace actually comes from the cloud. That comfort actually comes from God. So what's the take-home message this morning? It's about the cloud, nothing else. It's all about the cloud. God is leading us. He visually shows us in front of us, want us to follow him. Upload all your anxiety to him, your worries, everything that you're worried about, because he is infinite. He can listen to you. He won't hang up on you. Your friend will tell you. Your spouse may hang up on you, but God will not hang up on you, because he will listen. He has infinite capacity to listen, to absorb you. Doesn't really matter how upset you are, how worried you are. God is there. And then in that way, you can download that comfort and peace, because it's your only source of hope. Don't put your hope in food, because it will perish. Don't put your hope in possessions, because you can't take it beyond the grave. It's God where you should put your hope in.